You're listening to the Ballroom Network. The following program is intended for all audiences. Welcome to the South Burbs Hitmen podcast with your hosts, Joe Mandel, Steven Zim Zimmerman, and Vinnie Parisi. We're bringing you the White Sox coverage you need from the perspective of true Southsiders. Grab your Comiskey dog with an ice-cold beer and meet us at section 155. Everyone get on your feet for your South Burbs Hitmen.
That ball hit deep. Way back. You can put it on the board. Yes. Jimenez in the air. Left field. He's your hero tonight. Thanks, Cubs.
Over the head of Jenks. Uribe charges throws. Out! And the White Sox have won the World Series.
Alexei! Yes! 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 History! A perfect game by Mark Burley, and what an unbelievable play by Dwayne Wise.
First pitch starts now.
That is crazy how much I look like Joe Mandel. You guys are muted.
That is so funny.
I am not Joe. I am filling in for Joe, who's on vacation, right, guys? He's taking some time off.
He is in New York.
Look at that. I think his wife won some award or something like that, and he's going to be there to help celebrate and enjoy the Big Apple. Hopefully he comes back without any bullet holes.
So far, so good.
He sent us a picture of him eating at John's on Bleecker. Unreal pizza in New York City. Like, there's a line out the door every single time you go. I'm like, you really had to send me that right now? Like, I'm eating trash today, and you're eating John's on Bleecker.
That's gotta be a record. It's been less than 5 minutes and we're already on food.
Joe's not even here.
That's right. I got to tell you, I love New York pizza. I mean, I was born in New York, and so the first pizza I ever had was at the newsstand underneath the elevated train, where probably when I was 4 years old, and loved it. Now, Chicago pizza is great too, but people who disparage New York pizza, I don't get it. It's very, very delicious.
I agree. There's plenty of good pizza to go around. There's a day for Detroit style. There's a day for Chicago style tavern or deep dish. There's a day for a New York slice. There's 7 days in a week for a reason, fellas.
Look at Joe. He says he's eating that pizza right now.
That's amazing. That's what you like to see.
Well, we've got a very special guest. We're going to talk a lot of White Sox. We're going to talk some with him. And we're also going to talk about his new podcast series. And then after we're done with our guest, we will then finish up with more White Sox talk, and maybe even squeeze in some Chicago Bears talk because the media will be there tomorrow, and we'll start getting lots of reports as to what's happening over at Hallis Hall. Let's bring in the man of the hour, Mike North. How are you, my friend?
There they are, the boys. What's going on, Els? Hey, Zim. What's going on, Vinny? It's good to see you guys. It's about time. I every time the phone rings, it said Vinny. You know, but
I'm glad I can keep you on your toes.
That's hilarious, Mike. We're going to talk about Raging Mouth here in a few minutes, but first of all, I want to ask you about your love of the White Sox, because as I learned when we were been working on Raging Mouth together, is you started to become a White Sox fan before probably any Chicago sports team, right?
Yeah, that's it, Eld. I mean, the White Sox and I have a, what's that called? It's not a love-hate relationship. I love the White Sox. I just don't love the direction it goes most of the time, not just some of the time. And, and this recent debacle is no different than what I've seen from 1969, 70, the Eddie Stanky years. I think the fun of working with you is we're around the same age, where we got a lot of the same reference points where Vinnie and Zim are younger, of course. And so I've seen it all. But like I've said, I've never seen the over-evaluation of talent that I saw these last 4 years, thinking that this team was just going to run over. I was watching a Texas game before I came down here. I mean, there's no way the White Sox, this team that was evaluated to run baseball for the next 5 years of the American League, they're nowhere close to Houston or Texas. Nowhere. They're on a mission, these teams. I mean, that's where you look at what the heck happened. And I tried to warn everybody, as you know, when we started the bar room 4 years ago. Some of the gentlemen are in this room right now as we speak. I tried to warn everybody. I thought we started just working together when they did the Grandel signing, and I was livid. Why would you spend $70 million on a catcher that's had 2 number 1 spots somewhere else and couldn't hold on to them? And you just see things like Clevenger signing for $12 million. You just see the same type of ball player, Vaughn, Eloy. They're telling him he's got to play now. I mean, that the fact is he's been babying himself. That's what it sounds like to me. And when the manager says, hey, I don't care if you got a pulled groin or not, you're going out there. There's a disconnect somewhere. The organization is in disarray right now. But for me, it's business as usual. I've been critical of the White Sox, and, even on where I work now on my other job, God bless them. I mean, that's the flagship station, but it's not been an easy year. I mean, nobody saw this coming. I didn't even see this coming. I knew it wasn't going to work, but 19 under, come on.
Go ahead, Vinny. I know you want to cry a little, moan a little, groan a little.
Well, I'm going to cry. I'm going to moan. I'm going to scream. I do it every week. You guys all follow me on Twitter.
Sure.
Mike, were you ever like me though with this current rebuild? I'm not talking when you were a kid or in your 20s or anything like that. I'm talking with this rebuild. Did you ever believe in it for a second? I was all in. I was like,
I was mad. And you know what, Vinny? That's the first thing I like about you among many. You're willing to admit it. There's 80% of the fan base in this town, 85% of the media. Okay, that's never right, and they all have their cush jobs, and they're all going to treat these teams with respect. There should be headlines every day about people getting fired from these organizations, and you can't find it. And so I never believed in it. I'll never forget Aldo and I were doing a show, a barroom show. And Aldo goes, oh, now he's no big shakes that I'm going to talk about now, this guy. But I watched him the other night. He got a big hit in a situation. He's been injured. But I will never forget the day. And Aldo and I had just started, I think, if I'm not mistaken, so we were just getting to know each other. And Aldo told me that the Sox had signed Grandel. And I said, why would they do that? We have a 2-time All-Star right there. Now, he may not be working out somewhere else. Although McCann got a couple big hits the other night, different place, things happen. But for the White Sox, he was right. And their pitching staff was good with them. Giolito was good. And I knew there was a problem right there. Why would you replace an all-star? Okay, why wouldn't you spend that money somewhere else? And I just, from there on, even the sales stuff, we're going to go get prospects. I'm going, oh, my God. For Chris Sale, you got to get a couple really big studs. You got to get some players. Instead, you got Mancada, who I knew from the beginning. Aldo's my witness. I don't need tape, but we could find it. What are we doing here? Why? And they went on to win the World Series. And for the White Sox, it's been spiraling never 6. But when you have lifetime jobs in certain positions, how much pressure is it on you to perform?
Zim, what do you got?
No, I mean, that's exactly where I was going to go with it as these guys seem like lifers in these positions. And is it going to take Jerry selling the team or kicking the bucket for this to finally change?
Wow.
What do you think, Mike? You've been around, like you said, a lot longer than Vinny and I have been. You think that's what it's going to take in order to finally see some significant change?
I used to have Zim. I used to have I've told Aldo this. I've had lunch, breakfast with Reinsdorf 4 or 5 times. I've told him what he needed to do. And I told him this years ago, and it's all come to fruition. And he wouldn't do it. And this loyal, beyond the fault. You want to be loyal? Invite him to your house once a week. Invite him to your house once a week. This is a business. And they have this. There's just so many different things about the deal I don't like. If I was governor of the state, I'd relook at the White Sox deal with their stadium authority, where if they draw under 2.5 million or something, they get their rent free. But if they draw over that, then they don't. Then they got to pay some. Well, no wonder they're averaging 20,000 in attendance. I mean, my God, 20,000 guys at home. Think about that. Think about that. The Cubs, they don't play the rebuild game. We'll go get some guys and hope it works out. 33,000. I mean, seriously, that's a fan base that basically, I mean, I felt bad for you guys, Vinny. I felt bad for all the Sox podcasts. There's thousands of them, you know? They're all over the place. I'm going, wow. Besides the Titanic, I can't think of anything right now that would have you, fearing for your safety than having a Sox podcast. I mean, because it's got to be brutal right now to try to just think of something positive about the situation because there's not much.
This is a picture of Mike and Jerry. What were you guys doing there other than, pretending you like each other?
Yeah, that's what it is, too. We have that relationship, though. I think most of the guys that were his antagonists either left town, kicked out of town, or whatever. I'm still around, so he just said forget about it. But we have a good time when we're together. I ran into him. If you look in the background there to the left, Beebe's over there, Dave Kerner, Jesse Rogers, some of the guys that helped me with when I was at the Score. I decided to get the Freddie Hubner, Ron Gleason. We were there that night, and Jerry was there. And we got together and we took a picture. So that's it. We've had some fun together, but I don't want him to die, and he's not going to sell the team, so I don't know what's going to happen. And there's no pressure from the media. None.
No, there's none at all.
To put the pressure on the media, on him, are gone or out of the picture.
No, and they don't give me press credentials, and they don't give the right people. Right. I would love to go in there and report tomorrow. You know I flipped in the last year, Mike. I want to ask you this: you have dinner with Jerry Reinsdorf tomorrow. Now you have dinner with Jerry tomorrow, and he says, "You know what, Mike? I should have listened to you all those years ago.
Yep.
I want your opinion now. What should I do?" What would you tell him?
Well, you got to remember everything that I said for 4 years, okay, was beat up. I was beat up for, whether it be Tony La Russa, which I knew was when we got rid of him and we got this guy. I go, my God, where are we going? You got a team like the Royals that had him and didn't want him as the manager. So I tell him, you got to break it all up. Well, but then again, that wouldn't be the first time he's heard that. From not only from a lot of people, but he's his own man. He's got it. It's his business. He set it up. He makes money for his partners. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean,
Mike, you told me once that he, through Jack McDowell, said that he's playing for second place because he doesn't want to pay a championship salary to a team.
According to Jack McDowell, okay, and it's like. And it's been publicized. If you look it up, Jerry said dangled a carrot in front of him. And that's what it looks like. But it's worse than that. Nobody wants to go. I mean, if I want to go to a White Sox game, it's an all-day thing. I just talked to somebody earlier that goes to the White Sox game. He said he went the other night. He goes to 3 a year. They're got him running around with his car, parking in different places. It's just hard to get in, hard to get out. It's a bad situation right now. And that's he said he went opening day and it was a nightmare. And it shouldn't be, but it's just right now there's a malaise. There's a lot of lifetime deals over there going on. There's a lot of guys that there's no accountability. And, That's just the way it is. I've told it like it is forever. I think that's why I'm still around, because there's not many doing it.
Yeah,
there isn't. And,
I think, one of the things I respect about you so much, Mike, is that you're a fan. You want the White Sox and the Bears to win, but you are a prove it to me first. I am not going to invest my heart, 100% of my heart, into the team until you prove that you're going to spend, that you're going to make good decisions, that this isn't going to be the laughing stock of the city. And
I love the
right now, the Sox could be the laughing stock of the MLB. They're playing so poorly.
You know what I heard earlier, guys? Let's go to the other side real quick. I'm watching this Major League Network, this Ruben Amaro Jr. guy. No wonder he's out of work. He wants to he says Stroman's the hot item right now to get traded. And if you're the Cubs right now, my God, you're not. If you look at Milwaukee and Cincinnati, they can be caught. They only got, like, in the loss column, a few games. And I'm hearing this. Why do Chicago teams break up everything and rebuild? You got Cody damn Bellinger. Sign his ass. Mm-hmm. Are you out of your mind? You are the Chicago God-blessed Cubs. You are the Cubs. You make millions, billions. You got a sports book. You get to keep that money.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
My God. I mean, I cannot believe the nonsense. Bellinger, you build a team around Bellinger. You don't get rid of him for prospects. We did that on the South Side. How's that working? You got Swanson, who was free. Would have been brought 70 instead of challenging at least. Oh, let's get some prospects for Sano. Let's get rid of some prospects now, because we're never going to win with this team. Can't we keep a team for 4 years and see how they do? Oh, Cubs are 6 back. Let's get rid of Bellinger. Are you kidding me? The guy's back in form. Sign the guy. What is with everybody? And the White Sox do the same thing. What are we going to do? Rebuild the White Sox again? I told Aldo the other day, Vinny, I hire you to build my house. I go into the house, my foot goes through the floor. I don't go get Vinny.
Zim's turn.
Yeah, Zim's turn for the floor.
I get Vinny's brother-in-law.
Yeah. I go to turn on the boiler, it don't work. Who put it in? Zim. Oh, you want somebody to fix it? Yeah, let's get Zim. No. So that's what we do. We broke it, we'll fix it. We broke it, we'll fix it. We broke it. The same group. Yep. So I don't believe in anything.
Mike, with the trade deadline coming upon us, I, of course, remember the famous Chicago White Sox white flag trade, which has its own Wikipedia page. I mean, how many trades have their own Wikipedia page? And for you young bloods that don't remember or don't know, aren't aware or weren't alive.
I was on the air.
Yeah, you were on the.
It's like it was yesterday.
Yeah, I remember you.
I mean, my God, it was like, let's put up the white flag. Wilson Alvarez, Danny Darren, and Roberto Hernandez. I remember, and we got folk Howie, Barcelo, Vining, and Caruso was good for a year or two. We were supposed to. We gave up after we weren't back. I think we were back 3, 4, 5 games or something. That
3.5 games we were back. That's why I remember calling one of the stations and complaining about it because it infuriated
you didn't call, me. You called the score at that time.
It must have been the score, but I remember it being at night.
You called what? WGN? Come on. You called, huh?
I remember it being at night. Were you guys in 97?
Oh, at night where you were always. I probably called the grabber.
It was the grabber. Les Grobstein, indeed. That was 1997, 3.5 games out. They made this trade, and this is right before the trade deadline. So you're talking for the rest of the season, they have told fans, don't worry, we're not going to go for it this year.
Why would we get rid of Stroman? He wants to play here.
Yeah.
He wants. Now, I could see, we've seen ball players that want to play here. I want to play here. Well, you're hitting 210, I just watched Abreu before I came down. He was kicking the ball all over the field. He's got like a couple balls, but he's starting to hit. He's hitting like 250. But okay, maybe it was time for him to go. He's still got 50 RBIs, which would probably lead the White Sox right now. I don't know. Yeah. Bottom line is, every time we're ready to pay somebody, we move them. Like Burley. I remember them saying Burley's done. I'm going, wait a minute, the guy Burley's done. Does he have a sore arm or anything? No. He goes to Toronto for 4 years and wins 45 games, and the rest of the games he eats up 6-7 innings. You know, every time it's time for us to pay on the South Side, something happens. Abreu is gone. How do you rebuild and then trade one of your main pieces or let one of your main pieces go? So it's all just everything's a charade, man.
Do you think 3 straight rebuilds working in the mid 2010s like ruined baseball? Because the Royals, the Cubs, and the Astros did exactly what the White Sox did. Yeah, but then when it was time to pay guys, though, they went out and got John Lester. The Astros traded for Garrett Cole. The Royals signed what's his name, Hosmer. They supplemented it the right way. The White Sox didn't do that, but it makes me wonder if it ruined baseball for the next 10 years or so, because every team just tries to rebuild. The Reds look like they, are on the right track of doing it, but they could be the White Sox in 2 years, and it wouldn't shock me at all.
The Reds were on the come 4 years ago, and they got rid of guys, and now they're doing it again, and those are small market teams, though, Vinny. They're not from the number 2, number 3 market in baseball. The White Sox are run like a mom and pop organization, and they're a conglomerate. I mean, they don't like to look at themselves. They're not mom and pop. They're a corporate entity, and it's just mind-boggling what's happened to the team. And then you got Michael Reinsdorf, who I know, Mike. He's ready to step in. I know the one thing that Jerry Reinsdorf did always tell me. He said, between the two sports, Mike, if I had to sell one of the teams, if I had to not be involved with one of the sports, it would be baseball. The free agency thing was out of hand. He's never liked that. What owner likes that kind of thing? I mean, really, the Cubs and Sox should be talking about whether you go for him or not, Ohtani. At least talk about it. The Yankees are talking about it. Other teams are talking. Hello?
The 2 leaders right now are the Baltimore Orioles and the Arizona Diamondbacks for Ohtani. That's the latest report.
Well, that's what they say. I don't think anybody's got an angle on who's going to be there. I really don't. If it's going to be Ohtani with the Yankees, or why aren't the Cubs in on it? And maybe they will be. I do love the Cubs for what they did. They don't say we're going to rebuild again, and it's going to take 4 years, and everybody's going to be good and happy in those 4 years, and we'll wait for them to mature. It's going to be fun, and we'll see the minor league report. We'll see how Sheets is doing and Eloy, and then we'll jump up when Oscar Cola comes up and hits his 211. Ooh. But crap. Really, 31 years of that. Forget 31 years. I mean, I've been following. I'm on my 62nd year of following the White Sox, and most of it hasn't been fun. Believe me,
it really is sad. It's this city deserves better. The White Sox fans deserve better.
Cubs fans are great. Well, I don't know if this rebuild's going to work. Well, it worked for the Cubs. I was involved in 5 rebuilds before that one worked. He stopped Choi.
Sorry.
He stopped Choi. We actually told Mark Grace to get lost so we could play He Stopped Choi. I mean, we do the dumb. We put Carlton Fisk in left field with I remember, and Vinny, were you a LaRussa guy that didn't like LaRussa? Did you apologize yet? Did you throw it? Did you get a throw?
You need to go check your Twitter.com. I literally just did 2 days ago. But early in the season too, I said Grifol was that took me a week to figure out that he was way worse than Tony. I tried to be optimistic, Mike. I really did. I tried to believe that it worked with Alex Cora with Boston, right? I kept telling myself, Alex Cora, Pedro Grifol. He's the next Alex Cora, a bench coach that, was on a bench coach for a team that won the World Series and goes on and becomes a good manager. It hasn't happened.
All I'm going to tell you is Grifol was in the organization for a long time. That LaRussa finished 20 games over 500 will be looked on as a great feat in this town's history. if 5 years from now with this group of cutthroats. I mean, these guys don't want to play. They want to throw their mitts on the field. I mean, I've never seen such guys they seem gutless. Oh, I got a tweak here, a tweak there. It's not the Chicago type of baseball. It really isn't. We're blue collar people, and I don't see it with the White Sox team. They need an ass kicker. That's what they need.
It's a team full of Alshon Jeffries is what it is.
Oh, baby. Yeah, he was another one. But we've all had our weaknesses for the Bears, with different Bears. You know who was my favorite Bear receiver? Marcus Robinson. I love Marcus Robinson.
Yeah.
He was a good guy, too.
Came out of nowhere and really
played a couple good seasons, man. Every Bear plays a couple good seasons, then they move on. That's it.
Exactly.
Marty Booker at 100.
Marty Booker.
Nobody even talks about him.
One of my favorites.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Raging Mouth, the multi-part bio podcast on the life of Mike North, brought to us by Raul Jewelers out in Hoffman Estates. We really thank Brad and Ryan Gantz and the entire family over there. It's a 41-year-old family-owned business, Raul Jewelers, and so we really appreciate them sponsoring Raging Mouth, the Mike North story. And Chapter 2 just dropped today. To give you a taste of what Chapter 2 contains, here comes a quick preview.
In Chapter 2, Mike reveals that his childhood struggles in school and his family led him to drink, focus on playing sports, and drinking some more.
From the beginning, broken, bankrupt, morally, drinking, driving drunk, stuff like that.
But in his early 20s, things started to change, and it began when he met a woman named BB.
I see this girl coming, short skirt, long brown hair down to her rear end. I go, that woman can't be for me. I mean, that's a 10 right there. Forget about it. As she got closer, I go, wait a minute. It's her.
BB's support whenever Mike was down was critical to Mike's success.
Straight A student marries a dropout. I mean, think about that. She is the voice of reason. I mean, she's my ace in the hole. Yeah.
BB North. Mike, great job.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm going to embarrass Aldo right now, guys, because, when I first met Aldo, it was on Twitter, and he looks like, at the time, his picture looked like the guy that killed Scarface, Montana, from behind.
I did.
The sunglasses.
Scarface.
Yeah. Remember? Yeah, with the wraparounds. And I said, I like this guy. And we're the only. But we got together, and it's the second episode that's dropped. We got first episode's on, of course, YouTube and Spotify and North to North, and it tells the beginning. But the second episode, I didn't get a chance to talk to Aldo. Is unbelievable. It's about BB mostly. And it's just the way that he puts together his work ethic and his the way that there's music involved, there's sound effects. It just makes the listen. It's an audio, but it makes it a great listen. They're a half an hour. We're going to be doing it on the Score in August, and then two-parter there. It's going to be 6 episodes. But Aldo, I got to tell you, I listened tonight before I came on. And it's a great story. And the way that he puts it together is what I envisioned. So far, so good. And if anybody wants to just hear people, Adam Rifkin's going to hopefully direct this. But, me and Aldo and BB, we might have different ideas down the line about how this thing is going to work out. When I started this project, thinking about it, there was no Netflix or anything. There was none of that stuff. And this is basically for the screenwrite to be written. I didn't want to do writing a screenplay. I let somebody else write it off what I'm saying on the podcast. So it's been great. It's Rocky, only it really happened. That's what it is. It's Seabiscuit, only in human form. I was built to lose, and somehow, and I was thinking tonight, what am I going to talk about real quick? And I think my celebrity encounters back in the 90s, it will never happen like they did. I mean, I was in Las Vegas, and I said Frank Sinatra and I had drinks. I used to watch him on TV at my grandma's house. Or Don Rickles. I used to watch him on the Tonight Show. The next thing you know, I'm having dinner with him. Warren Beatty. Billy Maravich goes to me, hey, Mike, we're having a party at the house, at Christie's house, and Warren Beatty's going to be there with Annette Bening. Next thing you know, I'm in a conversation for 45 minutes with Warren Beatty. The guy, when I was in 8th grade, I went to see Bonnie and Clyde. So that's the cool stuff about the gig, but there's also the ups and downs, guys, and the highs and lows, but it's when radio was in its zenith. I know when sports radio was, that's for damn sure. I mean, I've been here for the whole thing. And it tells how the score got started, tells you how we dominated. I think I told Aldo in the 90s, the Bulls were the number 1 franchise and the score was number 2. We were listened to by everybody. So Raging Mouth is a great piece of work that BB and Aldo have put together, and I've been, and they put my words into a type of music type of situation, a nice rhythm that I think it's not a boring podcast. And I get bored by podcasts, and I know I get bored by me. Sometimes I don't want to hear you show that.
Nobody's ever been bored of you. I'll tell you that.
I'm bored of me. I'll tell you that. So it's a great piece. I hope everybody listens.
Absolutely, Mike. And I think one thing you deserve credit for is sharing the story. I don't think you get a lot of people who, had the accomplishments or achievements that you do that come out later in life and tell the story to people who are interested that might have not been listening to whatever it was that they were involved in however many years ago. Like I certainly wasn't listening to the score when I was 5 years old, but now I get to go back and hear some of the stories from those days. And the Tid Aldo put out today with Ozzie Guillen, I thought that was awesome. It was really cool.
Aldo, where did you find that Howard Stern cut? See, there was no Twitter at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So there was no social media when that happened. If there was, it would have exploded. There you go.
Mike, when he was at the score, had a Dropbox. Yeah. So he sent it to me. He says, hey, there might be some stuff in here you can use.
I forgot all about that.
It's a gold mine of stuff.
I know. We're going to have fun with that. I thought it was broken. But the Stern stuff was when you got on Stern's show at that time, and I'm not a Howard Stern fan. I mean, I'm not, but I liked him on E. I liked him when he had his E show. I listened to Steve Dahl, and Stern basically copied Steve Dahl. So I'm a Steve Dahl guy. I was friends with Steve Dahl, ended up with Steve. We were there when Jordan played with the White Sox. All these beautiful encounters with beautiful people. Bottom line is I haven't, to be on ESPN now after everything and being one of the, being a survivor, I've been very fortunate, but this episode's about my wife. And Aldo knows this. If you know my wife, you know quality. Top shelf Cadillac, period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. She basically, my first 20 years we were married, she just, do what you got to do. She understood my career. She understood all that. And she, top shelf Emmy winner. Aldo knows when she did that's her, those pasta shows. We're going to get those converted. We're going to put them out. Aldo don't know this yet, but we're going to do that because that's a gold mine. Bobby Heenan, Bob Probert,
Urlacher,
Butkus, Sayers, Peyton, Chamberlain, Wilt Chamberlain. I mean, so we won 2 Emmys for that show, but the mainstream media didn't even want to, because of their jealousy, believe it or not. Some didn't even want to promote it, even on CBS.
It's an interesting story regarding Mike's life is that because he was a high school dropout, because he was a former hot dog stand owner, and he didn't go through all of the rituals of going to journalism
I didn't go to the fine school of academia, Northwestern. Wow.
Mike told me this funny story when he met Mike Greenberg, Greeny over at ESPN. They were both at the Score. Greeny started off as a field reporter at the Score. And so Mike, he asked Mike, he tells Mike, I went to Northwestern University, and then you responded,
I'm a dropout. High school dropout. How about you? I went to Northwestern. Greeny's one of the. Mike Greenberg's a good look. I think I got another. I worked at Fox for 6 years, and 3 years I did mornings in 220 markets against Greeny. So that's the hiring that they had at the Score. Mike Greenberg, John Hood. These guys are still around. Freddie Hubner, Mike Murphy, Jiggs. Most of the guys are older now. And I mean, Terry Boers, not Jiggs, but Terry Boers is retired now. All great talents. All the whole crew. All great talents. Dan McNeil, all great talents.
PZ says from
that was put together.
PZ says from the Thorndale Salt Box to Chicago sports radio legend. Congrats, North.
Wow.
And Ravi has a question for you. Greeny, was he cool? Was he a good guy?
Now he's wearing an Aaron Rodgers jersey, Greeny.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Yeah, you talk about a guy that's going to be very disappointed.
Oh, you think?
Yeah, I agree.
Don't start, Vinny. Don't become the fan, please.
Hey! What do you think?
Don't do this to yourself.
You think I have allegiance to the New York frickin' Jets? I'm stuck through.
I know you're a Jersey guy. I know you probably like Joe Namath.
Only in hockey. Only in hockey.
I see. Well, wait a minute. Who's a New Jersey Devil fan? There could be a stadium filled with people. I go, how many people and you'd be the one guy.
Oh yeah,
you're right.
Me.
I understand.
Me.
You wear it proudly, and but all the guys were great. My story, the way that to talk Danny Lee into starting the sports station in literally 20 minutes, where he went that weekend to buy the Tribune to see how many advertisements were in the jazz entertainment section, and then he saw how many. He goes, "We're doing sports radio," and they're all music guys. I mean, think about it. You go into Sony, and the head guy goes, "We're going to do some sports," and they're going, "Wait, we're all music guys. You're going to listen to this goofy hot dog guy?" He goes, "Yeah, I am," and that's how it all started. So it's great.
Joe interned with Jiggets at Fox when he was in college.
Yeah. Dan's a great guy. Dan Jiggets is a great guy.
One of the nicest guys in the business.
We hit a chord together. That's I think if we wanted to, if the money was right, we could come back tomorrow and get it done. But it's a different landscape now, guys. And you can't talk about the teams like you used to. You can't, because there were no teams at the Score. I was the dummy that told Reinsdorf he should come over. But that's the trend that was going in anyway, guys. The Mets, and they were at WFAN, the Yankees. They've all been at these places. And when, Michael Kay is the announcer of the Yankees and he has a show, how critical is he going to be of the New York Yankees? Seriously. He isn't going to be, period.
Yeah. Mike, anything else about Raging Mouth you'd like us to know before we get you out of here?
6 episodes. Aldo's got bonus episodes like the Stern Ozzy thing.
Loved it.
He's got a trough of stuff. He is absolutely a genius at what he does with this podcast stuff. He's the podfather. He is.
He's
I
the
think
podfather.
the right guy. He sacrifices. Now he's getting paid handsomely for this, but let me tell you. No,
there is that.
He deserves it.
I work a little harder when I'm being paid.
I mean, so you're not doing it for nothing. I mean, he deserves it, though. There's some guys you pay. What happened? What happened? And Aldo, there's no doubt it's going to keep. He'll be in Mobile for the Senior Bowl next year with Danny. By the way, Dan Aguirre does a great job with the narration.
Yes, he does.
And Aldo does a great job with his narration. I'm happy with the whole project. I'm a happy guy. Zim, you seem happy.
For now.
What about me?
Zim's like I was watching the Big Lebowski the other night. Zim's like Steve Buscemi over there. Hey, phone's ringing, dude. You know what I mean? Really, I love Steve Buscemi. So I mean,
he's one of the best.
They're great. That is a great. Those 3 guys, that's acting at its finest, no doubt. And horrible bosses too, with those guys. Jason Day, and those guys are good too.
Lewis says that his favorite segment with Jiggins was at Hooters for the radio remote.
Jigs used to have Jigs would have a magazine wrapped with tape. He'd go, oh, and he'd hit the table. I mean, and when Jigs hit the table, he hit the table.
He's a big man. Joe is already looking forward to the
bar.
bar
room. On with this, with your thing here, your podcast. Appreciate
Joe is the man. He's
Absolutely.
The man. Mike, thank you very much we're 40 minutes past your bedtime. Get to bed, drink your warm milk, and get to bed.
I got dizzy. I thought I saw something, but there was nothing. I just, my peripheral vision. All right, guys. It's a pleasure. You guys, hey, nice to see you, Steve, Zim, Vinny, Aldo. Take care, guys.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you,
See
Mike.
you soon.
All right, guys. Love you.
All righty. That is Mike North, the amazing Mike North. I got to tell you guys, there are hundreds of hours and images to cull through, and doing a lot of talking with Mike and BB North about his life story. It really is an incredible story. And I know that one of the reasons he wanted desperately to do this podcast series is not only for his legacy, but also there was a lot of interest in making his story into a Hollywood movie. And then the pandemic hit, and then all of a sudden investors, scattered all over the place. And so we're almost starting over. And so my work on it is to try to make it feel a little cinematic, which is why I've done wall-to-wall music. I've added some sound effects and so forth. But more importantly, it really is the story. Here's a guy who grew up in Chicago's North Side and had all sorts of challenges. And I can relate to that as a guy who had a number of challenges too. His challenges had to do with he just couldn't focus in school. He could not read well. He went from public school to Catholic school, and the shock of having those nuns and stuff just really made him nervous. And his father treated him roughly, got to do it like a man and stuff. It made him nervous and stuff. And he overcomes those things, but it took him a while, and it took the help of a woman named BB North. And that, to me, right there, you don't even have to get into the score part, which is juicy stuff. But right there, you got the makings of a movie. A woman who provides unconditional love to a man and sees talent in him while he was growing up. People were telling him, you're not going to amount to anything. And that, I think, is why he got a little bit choked up today, because it really is one of the best stories ever told. And it's a somewhat like a mythical story. We've seen these stories before in Greek mythology and Hollywood movies and stuff, where some person comes to the aid of another person and lifts that person up to greatness. And that's what the Raging Mouth Mike North Story podcast, brought to us by Raw Jewelers in Hoffman Estates, is all about. So thanks for allowing me to talk about it. Guys, want to talk some White Sox?
Absolutely.
All right.
Not at all.
I'm going to start things off with the question of the show. We talked about this with Mike, but really, I'll start with you, Vinny. Let me start with Zim, because Zim knew this topic was coming up, so I'm sure he's got a great answer. Who really is behind this collapse? I'm sure you got more than one dunderhead who's responsible for this, but so I'll give you the stage, Zim, and tell us who you think is the biggest dunderhead.
I mean, the biggest one is Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the whole thing. He's the puppet master behind the whole thing. He's the one pulling all the strings. He's the one who put these guys in these positions that they're in. Kenny Williams got a pass for a long time because he was able to bring that championship to Chicago. But I've gone on record on this show saying that whole thing was an accident. They did not mean to win a World Series. And I stand by it. Am I ecstatic that it happened? Yeah, it really... that's probably the reason that guys like Vinny and I are White Sox fans, because as kids, that's like our first core memory of sports is, sure, I grew up in the 90s in the Chicagoland area, watching Michael Jordan on TV. But man, I was like 5 years old. That meant nothing to me. Being 12 years old, playing catcher for my little league team, seeing AJ Pierzynski go out there and get behind the plate every single day for that club while being the lifeblood. I know Konerko was the captain, so to say. He was the one who would have gotten the C on his chest, so to say. But Pierzynski was just as deserving. So, to have a role model like that and for that to be what it was, yeah, that started the foundation for it. But now to grow up with the understanding of it, for the same guys who built that team to still be in charge now, I mean, there's successful organizations out there that don't have the same guys in those positions right now, because they understand that in order to adapt to a modern game, you have to grow, you have to change, you have to overcome certain advancements in the game. And it's just not happening in Chicago. We're still seeing the same brand of White Sox baseball that we've seen since 1992 with Frank Thomas out there, where they're saying, we're just going to hit home runs. And if our pitching's good enough, hopefully, we'll win a few games. And it's like, it's not working. For the last 2 years, they didn't even have the right hitting coach in play, and that much was obvious by the home run total. So you want a dunderhead moment there, whoever assembled that coaching staff, whether it was LaRussa or Williams or whoever. I can go on and on and on about this, because I think we as White Sox fans are completely fed up. We've had enough of it. The fact that we're not a more vocal fan base, I think, is part of all of the problem with this. Oakland is finally getting some real traction in doing something about their ownership and doing something about changing their team. Out in Washington, the Commanders just had an ownership change due in large part to the fans, to the fan bases uproar over everything that's happening. And we as White Sox fans have just gotten too complacent. Mike was just on the show talking about how this is not a mom and pop organization. This is a big three market for all of sports, but the White Sox don't act like it. The White Sox operate the same way as the Kansas City Royals right now, and that's not okay. So the biggest dunderhead, PZ in the chat says throw a dart. I'm completely on board with that. Pick up a team calendar from any time between 1991 and 2023 and flip to a page, and you got somebody to blame, because it's a generational systemic failure.
Absolutely. I completely agree, Zim. You could just throw a dart and you can hit a player, you can hit any coach. Nothing has worked out well with this team in the last, basically since winning the World Series in 2005. And like you said, even that was kind of like a borderline accident. Like, it was just this great team, coming together at the right time and getting it done when it mattered most. Obviously, the easy answer is Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the team. Everything, starts out with him being his business and whatever. But I think you can look even deeper than that. There are a couple other bad owners in baseball right now. By bad owners, I mean cheap owners, because Jerry Reinsdorf is probably not a bad dude, right? Like, he's not like Mr. Schneider, who was just like, let out of Washington, who was a straight up bad guy in every sense of the word. But when you get to Reinsdorf, it's mainly because he's cheap. Well, there are lots of cheap owners with teams who have GMs that win. I think about Tampa Bay. Oakland has ownership issues when it comes to, like, finances as well, but also, like, moving the team and whatnot, and issues with their location there in California. But they go through, like, Moneyball type things, like the movie suggests, where they'll be good for 3 or 4 years. Then they sell everybody off. That's an issue. But, at least they have a playoff series win in the last 10 years. They beat the White Sox in the playoffs with a team kind of like that. There are other owners who GMs who find ways to be better than the White Sox have been with less money. The White Sox, they do at the end of the day have a top 10 payroll in the league right now. It's just not allocated the right way, and there's money spent in the wrong spots. Everybody likes to get on the Grandal contract. And Andrew Benintendi's had a good year, but, a middle of the pack left fielder, is he worth the richest contract in team history? Probably not. There are all sorts of things you can point to for Rick Hahn building a super bullpen that ended up stinking anyway. But, allocating all that money to Joe Kelly and Kendall Graveman. And we love Liam Hendricks. He, you pay for a closer, and he's really kind of underpaid based on what he's brought. But, even some of the giving Aaron Bummer that contract, I think it all, of course, it starts at the top with Jerry Reinsdorf. But if I'm giving someone a dunderhead, I'm going to slap it on Rick Hahn at this point in time.
I think that's completely fair. I mean, he is the one who ultimately assembled a lot of this roster. Again, I think like I said before, it still falls on Kenny Williams and Jerry Reinsdorf for allowing him to be in the position to do all of that.
Mhm.
I don't think, I think you make a really good point with Benintendi being the richest player in team history. Is he really deserving of that to be the player that he is? But at the same time, I ask you this: did you expect him to be any different player than what he is? I sure didn't. I expected him to be exactly the guy that he is. And I thought that the contract was totally fair for him. So what you were talking about with the misallocation of funds, I think that's what it boils down to with a lot of this. The overhype, I don't know if it really was overhype. Like Mike North was talking about earlier. Yeah, we were sold something, but did they really oversell, or did they just horrendously underdevelop? Yoan Moncada was the number one prospect in all of baseball when they traded Chris Sale for him. The guys that have been on that list recently, we're talking Adley Rutschman, bona fide superstar. We're talking Julio Rodriguez, bona fide superstar. We're talking Shohei Ohtani, who would have been a number one player. He was the number one international player upon his time of signing.
Moncada would be Boston's starting second baseman right now if they never traded for Sale. There's no doubt in my mind.
No, but Boston went out and got Trevor Story to address that instead. And guess what? He's just as good. They fell short, and then they went out and fixed the problem instead of falling short and then doubling down on it. And by no means am I saying that Boston's a good team. They're dead last in their division, but they'd be in first place in the AL Central if they were in that division right now. So clearly they're doing something better than the White Sox.
Yeah, Mike North talked about the Sox not even being close to Texas or Houston. And I didn't get into saying it, but I was like, Texas or Houston? They're not even close to like Detroit, who's in third place in the AL Central. What are we talking about Texas and Houston for? Let's get into third place before we start talking about Texas and Houston. They can't even win the damn AL Central. That stinks. The Twins are probably going to win the division. They'll play in the playoffs and lose the series with relative ease would be my prediction. And we're talking about the Rangers or the Astros, who have been the two best teams in the American League for most of this season. Like, no, not even close.
And you guys know I live in the Denver area. People ask me, I go to the card shows, I go to the card shops and everything like that. They ask me, who's your team? Who do you root for? Who's your collection? I always say White Sox. All these Rockies fans are like apologizing to me and feeling bad for me. I'm like, guys, you know who you root for, right? They're like, dude, check the standings.
Check the standings, check the payrolls, check the team history. Yeah, you know what? At least the Rockies, they'll go out and buy a free agent every now and then.
They sure will. They'll also throw a hell of a party at the stadium.
How much of the responsibility falls on Executive Vice President Kenny Williams?
I mean, he's the one ultimately building this thing, right? Like, he might not. All right. To put it into context, Aldo, you're a football guy. I know you do all of it, but let me turn it around on you. If the in this most previous rebuild of the Chicago Bears, how much of it do you put on Ted Phillips?
Well, yeah, Ted supposedly is only involved in the financial aspects of the Chicago Bears, according to Ted. Now, there's been reports by Hubarkish and others saying that they interfere more than they let on, but he is supposed to be handling only the financial, the stadium and TV money and so forth. With Kenny Williams, his responsibilities also include overseeing the baseball operations, letting it to Rick Hahn, but he's boss. He promoted from assistant GM to GM when he got up to that executive VP level. So I think Kenny Williams is a big part of the blame. Does he have a vision? Does he really know how to fulfill that vision? If he does, does he have the scouting system? And clearly he does, because a lot of these guys, came in as promising players, but as you guys have been mentioning, they don't have the developmental staff, the proper coaching, the proper managing. And I disagree with Mike North on this. I think that part of the reason this team is playing poorly this year is because of the remnants of Tony La Russa. I truly believe that. I think Tony was way in over his head. He was a manager who was sleeping in the dugout. He was a manager who needed help from fans. He was a manager who didn't know the rules. He was just way past his prime. And the reason he got that team into the playoffs his first season managing is because it was a playoff team. Yes. And so he took it downwards. And I think, Grifol is to blame clearly for what's happening this season. But there is the remnants of that La Russa smell still in that clubhouse where players think that I'm entitled. I can do whatever I want. I'm not going to play because my pinky hurts or whatever it is. This is what I suspect. I don't have any insider knowledge.
I agree. There's a big three. Right. I mean, it's Reinsdorf, it's Kenny Williams, and it's Rick Hahn. And then you could start to look deeper than that beyond them. Like, you could blame Pedro Grifol, you could blame the players, but Hahn and Williams are ultimately the most responsible for Grifol and the players. But, I do think Tony La Russa was a problem. Everybody knows my stance on that. But my apology that I wrote on Twitter the other day was mainly not because I thought Tony La Russa was good. I just now can see with a little more clarity now that he's gone that it went far beyond him as well. And that's kind of where my whole stance is on the whole thing now. Like if Kenny Williams woke up tomorrow and fired Rick Hahn, they would probably just promote Chris Getz, who's the assistant general manager. And he basically has the exact same philosophies as Rick Hahn. So it's hard for me to think that this team just doesn't need anything other than a complete overhaul. Not a single person there with a job right now should have a job on October the 5th or whatever the Black Monday of the MLB is. And that's it. You just need from top to bottom a complete overhaul, and you can't fire an owner. But you would just hope that because one time I heard David Kaplan say something. I know a lot of people disagree with things Cap says, but he said something smart that I heard one time. He said, owning a professional sports franchise in any of the big four or the WNBA or any of the big major sports leagues in the world, the MLS, any of them, it's a public trust fund. You have like a I don't even know the word I'm thinking of, a civic duty to make sure that this team is putting its best foot forward to be the best version of itself so it can compete in the league and every fan could have a chance. And Jerry Reinsdorf has done a disservice to that. So he probably doesn't think so, but one division title they got one division title out of the rebuild and two playoff wins, not playoff series wins, playoff wins, games.
I thought it was only one.
They got one versus Oakland and then one versus Houston. So there's two. They won the Giolito start and they took a 1-0 series lead. And then in the game 3, then in the game 3, Luis Robert hit one to Pluto and
that was about it.
They had the lead and then Dylan Cease couldn't go longer than a couple innings and they brought Crochet was injured. It was just disgusting that game 3. But yeah, it's been bad. So I think there's a lot of blame to go around. We could have a whole podcast where, like, instead of having a guest, we could just have a 50-minute segment for each person's blame session.
I love that idea.
The bottom line to me comes down to the thing we've all been circling around with this whole conversation. All three of us have touched on it, but it's the Tony La Russa hire. Whoever made the final decision to hire him is the one who is to blame for this. And it's not to say that La Russa is the root of all of it. It's just to say it was the wrong move at the wrong time. La Russa could have been a great manager somewhere, but this team was not the team to do it with. I understand that it's not necessarily the most popular opinion especially right now with Grifol being as bad as it is, but hear me out here. Just because one guy's bad doesn't mean the other guy's good, right? They could both be bad. Grifol could just be worse. And I think that's totally a legitimate case. I think that, again, La Russa did a great job getting that team to the playoffs, but I think a lot of guys could have gotten them to the playoffs. I think that the next season is where the wheels fell off, so to speak, and whether that's on La Russa or not is kind of irrelevant. The fact of the matter is he was the manager. He didn't stop it from happening, and that's why it falls on him.
And one thing people forget, and Mike touched on it, it is a point about La Russa that I do disagree with. He went 20 games over 500 with the Sox in 2021. They were on pace to win 110 games when the whole Yermin Mercedes thing happened. And he called him out publicly, and Yermin Mercedes wasn't the same from that moment forward. That's Tony La Russa's fault. Now, do I think Yermin Mercedes would have stuck it out with the team the whole year and been this great player? No, I absolutely don't. But the team as a whole had an attitude change following the All-Star break that year, and they really weren't even all that dominant in the second half of that season. They were like a 4 or 5 games over 500 in the second half of 2021.
They kept letting it slip away,
But they were so dominant in the first half of the season, and the AL Central was so bad. The Cleveland Guardians, I think it was the last year they were the Indians, they traded their second leading home run hitter to the White Sox. And the AL Central was terrible. There's a lot of reasons the 2021 White Sox won the division. Tony was better that year than 2022. I will give him that. He didn't fall asleep in the he did forget the rules the one time. I guess that's just as bad as falling asleep in the dugout.
Hey,
but
I forgot the rules that one time. All right.
Yeah, Liam Hendricks. You could pinch hit. You could pinch run for Liam Hendricks at the start. That wouldn't happen in today's game either because the DH is gone too.
I know. Well, they've been changing the rules constantly over the last 10 years, so I get it.
Yeah,
it's not excusable, but
yeah, 100%.
I understand how it happened.
It's better than falling asleep or walking Max Muncy or walking the batter ahead of Max Muncy with a 1-2 count just so Max Muncy could come up the following plate appearance and hit one to Pluto.
There's Vinny's been doing a ton of great writing about the White Sox, and in preparation for the show, I read his articles and I read a couple of others. I wanted to share a couple of lines from a deadline story that I read. I don't know if Deadspin, excuse me. I don't know if you guys saw this, but it's a long article, and they write in R-rated language here. But I picked a paragraph here that we can share for a family-friendly show. The writer says, it really wasn't long ago, just 3 years, that most people thought the Sox had the most exciting collection of young talent in baseball. It's hard to think of such a collection turning to ash so quickly in recent baseball, at least outside of Queens. They wanted to be good. They thought they were and ended up passed out in the barn covered in crap. Anyway, you have to try to be this bad. The Sox were without knowing it. And that's the gist of the entire article that's written by, let's give the writer some credit, Sam Fells. I agree with him. This team just looks so promising. I remember talking to Vinny on it before and or after Crosstown Crosstalk. I just felt like this is a team that's just got way too much talent to blow this. What has happened here? It's really one of the saddest stories in my sports fan lifetime of a franchise. What happened with the Chicago Blackhawks and their demise for decades before Rocky Wirtz finally put them back on track with John McDonough and Dale Talon and several others. Of course, the Bears, going a couple of decades without getting into the playoffs was not a good time. But this one is fresh, and it really, really hurts us Chicago sports fans really bad.
It might take a decade or more for the White Sox to get back into the playoffs.
It might take 2 years, depending on how they operate at this year's deadline.
I agree.
This year's deadline can really make or break this club right now.
So what's the deal? What are you guys suggesting should happen at this deadline? Buy, sell? What are your thoughts? I'll start with you, Zim, since you brought it up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious they're sellers, right? They went from 6.5 games back to 12 games back over the last week. That's full on seller mode. Whether they mean to be or not, that's where they need to be. As far as I'm concerned, anybody not named Luis Robert, Oscar Colas, Jake Berger, in complete honesty, I would keep him on the team. I don't think he's touchable, but I know a lot of people disagree with that. And It has a lot more to do with our history. And I want to make this case now because I've seen his name a lot in trade rumors. And I think he is absolutely one of the last guys this team should consider trading. First of all, they have club control on him until 2029. That is 6 more years of club control on a guy who is your second leading home run hitter. On top of it, he's shown that he's more than capable in the field. He can play multiple positions. He can DH for you. And did I mention he's your second leading home run hitter behind only a guy named Luis Robert Jr., right?
The White Sox, the lowly, disgusting White Sox, are the only American League team with 220 home run hitters.
That's right. Wow. And when you look at Jake Burger in comparison, let me just double check MLB stat leaders. I know that he was recently just 5th in the American League in home runs. This is all MLB. Let me look American League. Sorry. I thought I had this more prepared than I was.
That's quite all right.
But he is 5th in home runs. He is towards the top of the list in RBIs, if I remember correctly, top 25, somewhere in that range. Forgive me for not being on the ball with that one. As far as OPS goes, he's also top 10 in that, which means he's very high up there in slugging percentage. And for all the stat nerds out there, for the people who think that traditional, batting average, RBIs, OPS, stuff like that doesn't matter. He's towards the top of the league in hard hit ball percentage too. The guy tears the cover off the ball. He is, in my opinion, one of the last guys that this team should be considering trading. But he seems like the kind of guy that the White Sox will trade, and he'll go on to be an all-star third baseman for the Red Sox or somebody like that. That's what it feels like, and it's unfortunate.
That really saddens me. Well presented, though, Zim. What do you think, Vinny? Trade deadline is coming up. What do you foresee happening? What would you like to see happen?
So not that I'm trying to plug SouthsideShowdown.com or anything like that, but I totally am. I went on and I ranked my 6 realistic trade pieces, and people aren't going to like who I included for number 1. I don't think number 1 is going to get traded, but he is in conversations, so I included him there. I don't believe Jake Burger or Luis Robert Jr. are going to be traded, so I left both of them off. I started with number 6, Joe Kelly. Joe Kelly's a bullpen arm. He's had injuries up and down. If a team gave up a B plus prospect to get a reliever, though, I wouldn't be all that shocked. The Cubs got way more last year for relief pitchers who are worse than Joe Kelly. So, I think it's a possibility that the White Sox trade Joe Kelly. He's won a World Series twice with 2 different teams in 2 different leagues, and he was a big part of the Red Sox and Dodgers bullpens in both of those years. So I included him as the number 6 guy. And the only reason I have him at 6 over my number 5 guy is because he just came back from an injury. So we'll see how he pitches the rest of the season, or how often he pitches. Injuries have been an issue for him in a White Sox uniform. But at 5, I did put Kendall Graveman, who – it really sucks that his most recent showing was a dud. He blew the 3-0 lead that they had in the 9th inning yesterday, and that allowed the Minnesota Twins to ultimately complete the sweep in extra innings. But I still think Kendall Graveman is having a nice season, and if he were on another team that handled their pitching better and didn't have Pedro Grifol as their manager, I think you'd see a big spike in Kendall Graveman's play, because he was an outstanding pitcher with the Houston Astros and the Seattle Mariners before the White Sox. There's a reason when he was traded from the Mariners to the Astros in 2021, all the Mariners players were like, what the hell, we're waving the white flag? And it started a ripple effect there with that. And that was Kendall Graveman. And now the Sox might be able to get something for him. I would assume these 2 bullpen arms have a chance. At 4, I put Lance Lynn. I really like Lance. I've said this to Joe and Zim a bunch. I really wanted the White Sox to win with Lance. I was a huge Lance guy when he was with the Cardinals, when he was with the Rangers. And then when the White Sox got him, I was like, all right, let's go win a freaking World Series. You got Lance Lynn. And you can argue he's your 3, because it was coming off the Dallas Keuchel year where he was really good, and then he turned to be crap. But at the start of the season, Keuchel was firmly the 2 and Lance was the 3. And it's like, wow, you can really – and then this season – he's on pace to break the White Sox record for most home runs given up in a season by a starting pitcher. But he has an elite strikeout rate. What does that tell you? That tells you that his stuff is still really good, but guys are finding a way to know what pitch is coming when. That could be a White Sox problem. It wouldn't shock me at all if that's a White Sox problem. And if Lance went to the Baltimore Orioles or the Tampa Bay Rays, two teams who do great with analytics, they can help Lance come up with formulas and decision-making stuff, better catchers, obviously, calling the game, smarter managers. I think Lance could be a really nice trade piece. I don't think the White Sox are going to get much for him because they shot themselves in the foot with him. But if you could get something for him, I would pull the trigger. At 3, I put Tim Anderson, only because I do think Tim Anderson has the chance to be an elite player. He has been an elite player in every year of his career since 2019, except for this year. And he's really started to hit the ball lately. He hasn't hit a home run yet. And a lot of people are getting on him because he hasn't hit a home run yet. But what's Tim Anderson's career high in home runs anyway? 9? Who really cares if Tim Anderson's hitting? You'd like to see him hit a home run every now and again, right? And I'm pretty sure he's 2nd or 3rd in White Sox history in leadoff home runs all time. I think Ray Durham is number 1. But Tim Anderson, he's going to go to another team and he's going to hit a home run and he's going to, start hitting the cover off the ball again. His average will increase. He might play second base, which Team USA at the World Baseball Classic did the White Sox a solid by showing everyone that he can play second base if need be, because he wasn't starting over Trey Turner, who's one of the best shortstops in Major League Baseball, now a member of the Phillies. You could probably get something for Tim Anderson, I would think, of at least minimal value. 2, I put Lucas Giolito. He's probably number 1 if you disclude the guy I did put number 1, because I don't think they're going to trade that guy. But Lucas Giolito, he is a really good starting pitcher. He was a top 10 pitcher in the American League, Cy Young voting-wise, starting pitcher-wise, of 2019, 20, and 21. He was bad in 22. He's been good again in 23. That makes the outlier the bad year, not any of the good years. So I think Lucas Giolito will get the White Sox a haul out of everybody that is actually going to be traded. Number 1, though, I did rank Dylan Cease number 1, not because I do think the White Sox are going to trade him. He is a White Sox tradable asset right now, though, and he is the best of them. He's not having the season he did last year. You can argue Giolito's been a touch better lately, but Dylan Cease, the sky's the limit for him. He could be a Cy Young candidate year in and year out, especially if he's on a good team. I would say Dylan Cease is that guy. If he were to go to a team like Baltimore or Tampa Bay or Cincinnati, he would fetch a haul, and that's why I ranked him number 1. But I don't actually think he's going to get traded. But I also wouldn't be surprised. I think when you're 19 games under 500, really anybody shouldn't be untouchable. But
yeah, it's tough because the White Sox don't have that one piece to build around. You could argue it's Luis Robert Jr., but what we're seeing right now is his best season ever. It's been his most healthy season ever, right? So right now, as you talk about, Vinny, where with your outliers versus what the status quo is, well, right now, this season's the outlier for Luis Robert Jr. So can you really build around him confidently? And that's what's tough for the Sox. They don't have a J-Rod. They don't have a Rutschman. They don't have an Ellie De La Cruz. They don't have an O'Neill Cruz, For you cross-sport people out there who might not necessarily pay attention to guys other than the Sox, they don't have a Connor Bedard. They don't have a Justin Fields. They don't have who the Bulls seem to think Zach LaVine is. But they don't have any of that in Chicago, right? They don't have any of that on the
playing game.
No, well, the Sox have more wins with Luis Robert Jr. than the Bulls have with Zach LaVine. So I think that says enough right there.
That is true.
At any rate, the Sox have to do some things. I think addressing catcher, and I know they've been linked to Diego Cartaya. I think that would be an amazing move for them. I don't know what they'd have to give up to get him. I've heard lots of good things about Colson Montgomery, but he's still in A-ball. So God only knows when he's going to be ready if they do get rid of Tim Anderson. And beyond that, what even is their farm system right now? That's the tough part. So you got to rebuild if you're going to sell. You got to decide what the window is too.
So if you're going to blow it up and rebuild, shouldn't you fire some people first and not let Rick Hahn or Kenny Williams be responsible for trading these assets that you have? And I still look at Luis Robert and every name that you mentioned, Vinny, on from your article about the guys to trade. I think just about everyone on that list would be a desirable asset for a team that's trying to make the playoffs or trying to win the World Series because we know they're getting it into the playoffs. Those are all quality players who can do some things on a quality team with good management, like you said. So, should Jerry Reinsdorf consider making some administrative changes first before making any trades? There's a week left, right?
Yeah, I would say they absolutely should. It's August 1st, so I think that's a week from tomorrow.
Mhm.
And that's why I think they're going to fail again. Because, Mike, one point Mike did make, if I, built his house and I messed up his flooring and he stuck through his foot, he wouldn't call me back to, be the guy who fixes the floor. That would just be a dumb decision.
Yep.
If Zim broke his shower, he wouldn't call Zim to come fix it. He'd call somebody else. It's time to try something new. And if that guy messed up, you find a different guy.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably not going to full-on rebuild because they have Luis Robert Jr. and Dylan Cease, and I don't think they're going to trade Eloy or Andrew Vaughn, even though, like I said, I don't think anybody should be untouchable. There are only two prospects that I love that the White Sox have, and it's Colson Montgomery and Noah Schultz. They're both top 100 guys. I think Schultz is number 100.
Yes, he is. They're the only top 100 guys in the Sox.
Yeah, which they had 0 before last year. So at least we're at a starting point again. And they'll probably make a top 10 pick next year, right? It might even be top 5, depending on the lottery and whatnot that they now conduct in the MLB. But yeah, I think they're going to fail. I won't be optimistic about the next rebuild like I was this last one. I believed in Rick Hahn at first. I did. We had switched over from Kenny Williams, and it seemed like Rick Hahn was finally able to do things the way he wanted to do them starting in 2016. And I believed there was a philosophy change because the Cubs won the World Series. And, that could also be a business thing. Like, okay, Rick, we're already light years behind the Cubs in terms of popularity. Now we're in danger of being completely irrelevant compared to the Cubs. They just won the World Series. And at the time, again, hindsight is 2020, of course, but at the time, Rizzo, Bryant, Baez, Contreras, we didn't know the type of human being Addison Russell was at the time. They had Lester and Hendricks and Arrieta. At that time, it looked like they could win 2 more. And they ended up not. It's very hard to do that. But at the time, it's like, okay. So I thought there might have been a philosophy change as well because of that. And I do think that's important. I've heard from people that I trust that it is important for the White Sox in their minds to be at minimum better than the Cubs. It's a terrible way to look at it. You should want to be better than the teams in your division, not the freaking Cubs. They should be irrelevant to you. But I thought there was a philosophy change. I was wrong. I am not going to have as much faith in Rick Hahn for Rebuild 2.0 or Retool 2.0, whatever the hell you want to call it.
Guys, this is the Crosstown Series week, and typically we'd be spending an hour talking about this upcoming series, but that's not to be with the state of the Chicago White Sox right now. But let's take a look at the pitching matchups for this series. Let me get this banner out of the way. And we've got Kyle Hendricks versus Michael Kopech going tomorrow night at Guaranteed Rate Stadium. Kopech is 4-8 with a 4.29 ERA. Kyle Hendricks is 3-4 with that 3.38 ERA. Vinny, what do you think about this matchup? And can the White Sox win a game at home?
I do think they can beat the Cubs, but the Cubs are also bad. I also think the Cubs can beat the White Sox because the White Sox are bad. The pitching matchup favors the Cubs in this game on a typical day. But Kopech has the potential to be one of the best pitchers in the world on any given day. We've seen him take no-hitters into the 8th inning. We've seen him dominate the New York Yankees lineup that has 4 Hall of Famers in it. Last year, I'm talking, this year they stink, but last year there were tons of great talent in the Yankees lineup. And, we've seen Kopech have stretches like that. He hasn't been on one of those lately. His most recent start was better. You see he's got 102 strikeouts on the screen. That's in limited innings with a couple injuries that took him out for weeks at a time. His stuff is good. He just gets in his own head. He likes to walk batters. He leads to run scoring. If the Cubs put together good at-bats against Kopech, they're going to win the game. But if he has his dominant stuff and the confidence on the mound, then the White Sox will have a chance. I'm not certain about the offense against Hendricks, though, and that's obviously a scary thing.
Zim, how do you see this game?
I'm really aligned with Vinny in this. It is a great pitching matchup, in my opinion. I think both games are great pitching matchups.
Mm-hmm.
Either one of these guys can dominate on any given day, and it's all going to depend on the offenses. You know, it's going to be, can Bellinger spark the Cubs, or can somebody from the Sox, you know, get lucky and poke one over the fence? Because that's what it feels like it takes for them. I will say it's a series at guaranteed rate field, so we know one guy's going to be playing hard and hit the cover off the ball. It's a matter of whether the rest of the team gets behind him or not.
Okay, and then the matchup on Wednesday night, it's Marcus Stroman versus Lance Lynn, two guys who might be facing playing their last games as Chicagoans, or next to last games. Zim, start with you. What do you think about this pitching matchup?
The pitching matchup, like I said, these are both great games. Stroman versus Lynn. Even before the season started, we all could have circled this game and said, yeah, that's going to be a pitching duel. The thing is, you know, as Vinny mentioned quite some time ago, Lance Lynn is looking to try to set records for home runs allowed as a pitcher this season. So it'll depend on where his stuff is this day. If he pitches really well, though, he could do a lot to boost his trade value, because I don't think there's any chance that he's not moved before the deadline. I think he's as good as gone. I think the Cubs have a serious conversation to have about Marcus Stroman. And regardless, he's a dude, you know, 10-7 this season with a 3-something ERA. He's coming out looking to prove something to himself more than anybody else. He thinks he's a real, you know, badass MFer, and he's trying to prove it to everybody else too. And I don't blame him, because his stuff has been electric this year. So, it's all going to come down to pitching. And frankly, I think this game rests entirely on Lance Lynn's shoulders. It's whether or not he's got his stuff this day or not.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, it favors the Cubs again, right? Like Marcus Stroman, he was an all-star. The Cubs have two of their second and third best pitchers going in this game, and the White Sox have their fourth and fifth guys right now. Or I guess you could say third and fourth, because they don't really have a fifth guy with Clev out. But Stroman, he hasn't been that good in his last three starts, and nobody's really talking about it, because nobody in Chicago wants to talk about it, because they don't want it to come to light so his trade value drops. But he hasn't been bad. He just wasn't that dominant guy, that all-star like he was in the first half since the all-star break ended. I don't know if he's injured. He had the blister on his finger and whatever. But, I mean, Lance Lynn, again, he's given up 1 billion home runs this season. The Cubs are 20th in home runs this season as a team in the MLB. I'm not certain that they're just going to go out there and crush the ball. Like, obviously got to be careful against guys like Bellinger. And, you know, Happ is having a down year home run wise, but, you know, he still got 16, I think. He's a threat every time he's at the plate to hit one deep. Same thing with Swanson and Horner. But I think this is obviously the pitching matchup favors the Cubs, and they've been playing better lately. But they're coming off a series against the Cardinals, who are bad. Well, the Cardinals took the 2 or 3 from the White Sox. So I'm not going into this series with a whole lot of optimism, but you'll never hear me, even in the worst of worst White Sox seasons, predict that the Cubs are going to beat them. No way.
Joe says that the Sox would be out of their mind if they start Lynn and Gio again. So, of course, they're going to start those guys.
See, I disagree. Oh, I agree with Giolito now.
Okay.
I think you have to start Lynn one more time, though, because
Lynn's
he was so bad in his last game.
I entirely agreed. His value can only go up based on that last start.
Yes. And they let Giolito go one after having a terrible start, and he gave up 0 runs through 5 innings yesterday. So I think people realize that the one bad game post All-Star break was kind of an anomaly for Giolito. You're going to get yesterday's performance more often than the bad one.
Now, if the Sox are smart, what they're going to do is they're going to get a deal in place for Lynn, you know, over the next couple of days. And then they're going to throw him out there on Wednesday just to prove that he can actually do it and pull him like 2 outs into the game.
All right, after that 2-game series with the Cubbies, the Sox will start a 4-game series with the Guardians, and it looks like it's going to be Tanner Beebe. And I pulled this before MLB changed, updated, I should say, the pitching matchups. So I believe it's going to be Dylan Cease facing Beebe. What do you think about that matchup, Vin?
If it is Dylan Cease, yeah, I would say that's obviously. I mean, BB's been having a really good year this year, and his numbers are all better than Dylan Cease, but it's Dylan Cease, right? So, like, you go into a series with your ace thinking that you have a chance to win the game, right? Like, it's supposed to be the 1 in 5 games where you're like going into it with confidence. But as we saw over the weekend against the Twins, Dylan Cease could have a really nice start, right? It could all be amazing. And then, you know, the bullpen could blow it and the team could lose the game anyway. And the Guardians, they play the White Sox extra hard. I don't think the Twins play the White Sox all that extra hard. I think they just treat it like any other game. But for some reason, those Naylor brothers and Jose Ramirez and all those guys in Cleveland, they love destroying the White Sox. So, I mean, it's going to be a tough series for sure.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Steven Zim, overall on the entire 4-game series, White Sox and Guardians?
Yeah, the Cleveland owns the White Sox. That's all there is to it. It's been that way for a few years now, and it's just the unfortunate reality. The Naylor boys crush against the Sox. Jose Ramirez has owned them. I don't even know if he's still there anymore. Honestly, I've paid so little attention to the rest of this division because the White Sox are just so depressing. All I know is that they've not done well against the division this year. I don't expect that to change in this series. And I think the Sox, over this 5-game stretch in the next week, I think a very realistic 1-4.
1-4. Ouch. Joe says he's actually prefer the Guardians as owners over Jerry. Oh, man. The only other announced starter, at least according to ESPN, on Friday, it will be Lucas Giolito pitching for the White Sox. No announced starter for the Guardians. And that's that. What do you think about Giolito getting one more start before he's dealt, Vinny?
I would not do it. I agree with Joe because he got his good start in there. You don't need to go up there and play, even if they play okay against the Guardians. Like, you risk injury. There's all sorts of things. Like, it's one thing I like about hockey. They're not dumb when the trade deadline comes around. Like, the Hawks will bench Patrick Kane until he's traded to the New York Rangers, right? Like, I remember guys will fake injuries and miss games because they know they're going to be traded and they want to go play in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Your salary is not going to change, so you want to play in the playoffs, right? So, I mean, I wouldn't do it. I think a Giolito trade will probably get done sooner than later. If they make their starts, Lynn and Giolito against the Guardians, I'm going to be less optimistic that they're traded at all. And they'll be back with the team again next year, and they'll try and run it back, which is also probably a mistake. So, either way, the White Sox are in a perpetual circle of mistakes. I hope they're motivated by making the Cubs sellers because I think the Cubs season hinges on this 2-game set with the White Sox. And then I think they have Washington again. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's Washington again for the Cubs right after the White Sox. So another bad team and a long stretch of bad teams leading up to the trade deadline. So if the White Sox could go play spoiler, that'd be fun. But it's really going to be the only time this year that I care that they play spoiler, though.
Actually, after the White Sox series, the Cubs will have a 4-game set with the Cardinals at St. Louis.
The Cardinals. I knew it was another bad red team that they just played.
Guys, hey, do you mind if we swerve our talk over the Chicago Bears for these last 15, 20, 30 minutes of the show?
Let's do it.
I love it.
Talk about something exciting.
Yeah, I know Vinny has posted a few news stories on the fan-sided website. Which one do you post the Bears articles to?
The Windy City.
The Windy City. Tell us about your latest one, which was, I believe, about acquiring a pass rusher, right?
Yeah, so David Kaplan, how he does his new little YouTube series, Take That,
right.
Or the recap. He announced he's been poking his nose around the league, and everyone believes that the Bears are interested in adding a pass rusher before, training camp starts. And obviously this came on Friday. Well, training camp starts tomorrow with media interviews, but stuff people could still be signed. Like the big 3 that are still out there are gonna sign before things really get going, and they'll play in the NFL this season. Justin Houston is an option. A lot of Baltimore people believe that he is going to end up back with the Baltimore Ravens. I know our fan-sided site, Ebony Bird, for the Baltimore Ravens, they wrote about that and showed some sources of Baltimore beat writers confirming that. But, I mean, he's still out there. You could go in and swoop him up. Forgive me for this name. I never in all the years have been able to pronounce it correctly. Yannick Ngakoue?
That's pretty close. I like it. We'll stay with that.
Yannick Ngakoue, and then Jadeveon Clowney, the former first overall pick. He kind of became a first overall pick because he had a big hit while playing for the South Carolina Gamecocks. And obviously he's a good player, right? I don't know if he necessarily became that, like, I kind of expected him to be like a Hall of Fame talent when he was drafted first overall. I was like, this guy's going to be unreal. He's going to be the next J.J. Watt, or I guess you couldn't say the next J.J. Watt when he was first drafted, but, he was playing with J.J. Watt, and it was awesome. And he was good. He wasn't great, I would say, but I think the Bears could use a good pass rusher right now, and all three of those guys fit the bill. Zim kept shaking his head at Houston, though. Is that because you just believe he's going to sign with the Ravens, or do you believe it's because okay,
he doesn't fit anything that the Bears have been building this season? What's the oldest player the Bears have signed this offseason? Do you know, Vinny?
Is it the linebacker from the Colts?
I don't even know who it is. I know that his age is 28 years old, though.
Okay.
I know that the Bears are building a young roster right now. They are not building for this year. They are building for the future. If you notice all of the signings that they're making, they are leaving lots of room to be able to pay Justin Fields when that time inevitably comes, right? This team is not built for this season, and a lot of Bears fans need to keep that in mind. They will do well this season. They will win 9 games this season minimum. The over-under, by the way, is 7.5 right now. Go bet the over. I'm telling you now, we had our handicapper on earlier. Well, I'm playing his job right now. Go bet the hammer the over on that. They will do it. This is going to be one of the most underrated teams in the entire league. People think that Detroit's going to do well this year. That should tell you how wide open this division is. All right.
Sorry, Don Burr.
As for
wherever you are.
Hey, Don Burr's a great Bears fan, man. He never misses a show.
That's true.
How true is that?
But I'm just looking around. I'm looking around at some of the guys that are available right now. Yannick's the only guy who is even intriguing as far as any of these guys go. He's the right age. He's only 28 years old. He's young. He's played in this system before. He unfortunately has bounced around a lot, but that kind of works in the Bears' favor. They can sign him probably for less money because of that. Clearly, that's not the Bears' first priority right now. They went out and signed a wide receiver today, and it was not a special teams wide receiver either, which kind of has me worried about what they think of the lower end of this receiving core and guys like Dante Pettis and Velus Jones Jr. and guys like that. But
I think also there may be concerns about Chase Claypool, and he was activated off the PUP list, as Joe mentioned in the chat room, but nonetheless, the fact that he had an injury, missed a part of the OTAs, might be concerning to them. And Darnell Mooney, we all know, is coming off an injury. There are expectations he will be ready to rock and roll come camp. But nevertheless, there might be some concern with the number 2 and number 3 wide receiver on this team. So Isaiah Ford was signed today, as Zim mentioned. And I got to tell you, regarding Zim, to your point about the Bears signing young players, I totally agree with you. That is the master plan. But if you can get a veteran on a 1-year deal, and so you're paying him $7-8 million on a one-year deal, then that's okay. And I think that's actually what they're trying to do with Yannick Ngakoue, is to sign him to a 1 or 2-year deal if you have to. He's 28 years old. The problem with him is that he just doesn't want to pay attention to the running game. He wants to get sacks. And so he's a liability in the run game. And we all know what happened to the Bears defense last year against opposing teams' running game. And so there might be some concern about that. And they're trying to lowball him. There's no doubt in my mind. Leonard Floyd was signed up for a 1-year, $7.5 million contract. contract. Ndakwe has stated that he wants more. He wants a multi-year contract. He has stated that he wants to settle down with his family in a particular city, and that's why he brought Drew Rosenhaus in to manage that, to try to negotiate that contract. And Drew's going to play it tough, and we'll see where it goes. But it's going to be interesting, because if the team, as Zim rightly said, this division is wide open. And so if you can get a pass rusher, maybe you can't squeeze into the playoffs and get these young players the necessary playoff experience that it takes to eventually win Super Bowls. So it's going to be interesting to see.
My counter argument with the older guy, circle back just a little bit, because I do think that Ngakoue is absolutely a guy they're looking at. I do completely agree that they're going to try to lowball him. You know, you talk about a 1 year, $7 million deal for Leonard Floyd. What does that mean they're looking at for Ngakoue? Maybe 2 years, $12 million, you know, 9.5 in guarantees, 8 in guarantees, something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's totally reasonable, but he probably wants something a little longer term. As far as bringing in an older guy, though, what is the advantage to that? There's no advantage to that to this roster. You're not mentoring anybody. All you're doing is taking reps away from young guys who are supposed to be the core of this team, right? If you want to bring in a new edge rusher, if you really want to bring in somebody who's going to be here long-term, who's going to be your mentor, who's going to be your cornerstone, why not do that with your 2 first-round picks next year, right? You can't honestly tell me that Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus are looking at this roster right now going, we're a Super Bowl competitor this year, right?
Right,
so
I agree.
That's where I think their minds are at. I think they have a plan. I think they're sticking to it. Now, I think contrary to what Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace did, that plan is fluid and can very much change if something comes up. We're not going to sit our franchise player through a preseason because it's not in the plan. Right. We're gonna do the right thing. But there's a lot of nuance that goes into this. I think Ngakoue, even though he's a sack getter and not a run stopper, the 2 linebackers that you've signed this offseason have really allowed you the freedom to be able to go sign somebody like that, right? To allow somebody to just go get him, throw him in on 3rd down, go get him, throw him in on 2nd and 3rd down, go get him. Who cares? You know, you've got these 2 linebackers out there. You got Sanborn, who we already know is a sideline to sideline sort of coverage guy, on top of who's the other kid that they had? I know they got somebody else in there at linebacker too.
Edwards from the Eagles, TJ Edwards.
No, there's somebody else I'm thinking even further down than that.
Tremaine Edmonds was
no, because he's the starter. He's the starter.
Oh,
right? I'm thinking of somebody further down.
Okay, you're talking bench.
Let me find him.
You maybe talk
Noah Sewell,
who was drafted in the
draft pick.
6th or 7th round, right?
Correct. That's who I was thinking of. But Sewell's also a sideline to sideline kind of guy who's going to get his opportunities alongside Sanborn. You know, Sanborn and Sewell will probably get a lot of those. I think Sewell will end up taking them away from Sanborn. I know not a lot of people want to hear that, but the neck might not be here to stay. And Sterling Weatherford, that's a kid who a lot of people like on tape. He's a special teams guy, and that's it at the end of the day. He's going to be a hell of a special teamer. He's the kind of guy who's got staying power as a special teamer. But
Well, Weatherford intrigues me because he was a safety in college and played at a really high level. He's a tall, lanky guy, long arms. And so because he didn't quite have the speed to play NFL safety, they've moved him to the linebacker position. He's been adding weight. I think there's more promise for him as a potential guy who could deliver quality snaps at the linebacker position. I don't think he will ever be a reliable starting linebacker, but I think in addition to special teams play, he could be a really good bench player. Sterling Weatherford, keep an eye on him.
He feels like a nickel linebacker, you know, the kind of guy that you bring in when you want those 5 DBs, but you don't actually want the slightness of frame of a DB out there. So instead of that 5th corner or that 3rd corner, you bring in a 3rd linebacker. You know what I mean? Those kind of packages. The 3-4-4 sort of package rather than a 3-3-5. in this defense. But yeah,
these Bears coaches love their linebackers to be long, and their pass rushers too. They want long arms. They want tall guys. They prefer that, which is one of the reasons they allowed Roquan Smith to go. They liked the way Roquan played, but he just didn't fit the athletic skill set that they want out of these linebackers. And when I looked at tape of Tremaine Edmonds when he was with the Buffalo Bills the last few years, this guy could become a Brian Urlacher type. And what I mean by that is when they go into their cover 2 defense, he's going to man the middle of that field to stop the tight end from going across the middle, running backs from going across the middle, and he could be that third defensive back, turn that cover 2 into a cover 3 because he's got the speed and the length to maneuver the middle of the field. He could be, I think he's going to be a Bear favorite. We're going to, hopefully, this Chicago Bears team, which has a great tradition of linebackers, Butkus, Singletary, and Bill George invented the position, and so forth and so on. I think that Tremaine Edmonds, because he's a young guy, he could eventually be on that Mount Rushmore with some of those other great linebackers.
So you can just cross out Roquan Smith's name and write Hitmen's right underneath it.
There you go. I like
Smith
that.
did that one to himself,
Indeed. Vinny, what else have you got coming up at Windy City, the Windy City website about the Bears? You got any ideas on what you're going to be writing about next?
Yeah, so today we did 3 offensive players that they can try to, if they want to add a running back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's something they would be interested before the end of the season because they're going in with Deontay Foreman or Khalil Herbert.
And the rookie, Roshan Johnson.
Yeah, and Roshan Johnson, who, Aldo, we talked about him right before he was going to be drafted, and then the Bears ended up being the team that got him. We had no clue he could have been a Buffalo Bill or a freaking Miami Dolphin. We talked about him at length, though, and he ended up coming to the Bears. I thought that was fun. But, I mean, if they wanted to go do something like that, that's already up, and then I'll probably go look more in depth on Ngakoue or Jadeveon Clowney and get stuff like that out there for tomorrow. So that's going to be my Bears. I have one Bears thing coming out tomorrow. Other than that, it's the trade deadline as well. So got the Sox and the Cubs coverage mostly too. But if the Bears, there'll be Bears news that comes out tomorrow. So it'll be a lot of news.
Tons.
So tomorrow's.
I'm sure you'll be writing about Chase Claypool tomorrow because they everyone went into this big uproar when they announced that he was put on the PUP list, and they forgot that you're on the PUP list. You can be on the PUP list for 5 minutes and be taken off, and essentially that's what happened with him. He's on a PUP list less than a day or two, and so they're going to be talking about Chase Claypool. What kind of an injury did he suffer? Is he ready to practice and so forth? That could be your lead story tomorrow, Vinny.
Absolutely. On DeWindy City, we had a piece about him going on the PUP list and off the PUP list that were like 12 hours apart. It was hilarious.
How about that? Look at that. Well, let's just hope that he's ready to practice and get those all-important reps, because Justin Fields did speak highly of how he saw Chase Claypool at the beginning of OTAs before he suffered an injury, and thought that he's really up to speed, knows the playbook really well, and had high expectations. The fact of the matter is that this wide receiver core, if everyone plays to their potential with DJ Moore, we know what he can do. There is no speculation because he has caught 80, 90, 100 passes in his NFL career. And with Chase Claypool, the promise that he had coming out of Notre Dame, a big tight end type body who can run a 4.4, 4.5, and then Darnell Mooney. We know the relationship he's got with Justin Fields. Just those 3 guys alone, and there's depth too, and promising depth with Velus Johnson. Yes, he had a Velus Jones. Yes, he had a poor rookie season in terms of holding on to the ball, but nonetheless, the guy has 4.3 speed, and you can't coach that. No matter what you do to a player, you can't turn a 4.5 guy into a 4.3 guy. And so even if you get him on some bubble screens and some gadget plays, he could be a version of Tariq Cohen. This team is loaded at, not loaded, that may not be the right word, but is much more talented at the wide receiver position than it has been in years. And then you've got a pass catching tight end that they added, Robert Tonyan, and the growing chemistry between Cole Kmet and Justin Fields. They should be able to throw the ball, and they got running backs out of the backfield who can catch the ball. So this, Justin Fields says, I'm going to throw for 4,000 yards this season. maybe he feels, he looks at that lineup and says, yeah, I can do it. What do you think, Zim? You think Fields is going to throw for 4,000 yards?
What I think it's a lot more achievable than a lot of people realize, right? I mean, you can quickly go down this lineup, right? And we look at some of the names on here. So we got DJ Moore, good for 1,000 yards right there. He's a quarter of the way there already. You got Darnell Mooney. We know he's 1,000-yard receiver, but we'll be conservative. We'll say 800 yards is probably a realistic, attainable number for him as a wide receiver too. Boom, we're almost halfway there already. You spread it out across the rest of the wide receivers, you got to figure another 700 yards between the rest of those guys. We're now at 2,500 yards, and we're not even out of the receiving room. 2,500 yards to receivers, and that's not even like being ridiculous. That's not being generous. That's saying DJ Moore is DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney is Darnell Mooney, and a stable of wide receivers is a stable of NFL wide receivers, because they actually are NFL wide receivers this year, something they haven't had in years past.
Yeah.
We're not going to be rotating the bottom end of this roster. Well, then we got Cole Kmet, right? Cole Kmet had what last year? 700 yards?
I think it was 700. Yeah.
Yeah. So 700 yards on like 70 catches, something like that. I mean,
Right.
very underrated season from a tight end, honestly.
And he's
A lot
on a
of people-
contract.
Yep.
Contract year.
So you got Cole Kmet, good for 600-700 yards. All right, now we're up to 3,100 yards. 3,100 yards. Keep going down the list. We got Robert Tonyan now. Figure 200 yards. I mean, I think that's
300. Yeah, he's
Right.
he's probably much more of a red zone threat than he is in between the 20s. So yeah, he won't get the yards, but he'll get the touchdowns.
He's going to steal some touchdowns from Kmet, and Kmet's agent is going to have something to say about that. That's for sure.
Of course.
And then you factor in the running back room, right? We know Dante Foreman can catch the ball. He took over the Christian McCaffrey role out in Carolina last year. He easily stepped into that role. Khalil Herbert, he's not really a pass catcher. Roshan Johnson, we have yet to see. Travis Homer, fringe guy, honestly. Do we even know if he's going to make the roster? Tristan Ebner, do we even know if he's going to make the roster? All right, but we're talking at 3,100 yards. You add in the running backs. We're at 400 yards, we'll say conservatively with the running backs. We're at 3,500 yards on a conservative estimate if all Justin Fields does is play halfway decent quarterback. So he's got to come up with 500 yards. If he's the guy that we think he is, right? If he truly is a franchise quarterback, if he is a guy who can take your roster and elevate everybody, right? Well,
Exactly.
3,500 yards should be easy to elevate up to 4,000. So do I think he can do it? Yeah. Honestly, conservatively speaking, I genuinely think he can, so long as he stays healthy and plays 17 games. I'd even give him 15 games to do it, honestly.
Yeah.
But
Part of it, Vinny, it also is the defense. If the defense does not play well, then, he's going to be he could be playing a lot of catch-up games where in that third and fourth quarter, he's putting up tons of yards because he's got to throw the ball. I suspect that the defense is going to be much better than it was in 2022, where they were a sieve in the running game and the passing game started to deteriorate. Their pass defense started to deteriorate when injuries started to hit the defensive backfield, and they had a lot of young guys back there to begin with. So it is possible that the defense could put Justin Fields in a position where you got to throw it in order to keep us in games. And so that's how perhaps he reaches the 4,000 yards. What do you think, Vin?
I think he reaches 4,000 yards of total offense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see him throwing for 4,000 yards. And I know I'm the Debbie Downer of the Bears on the Barroom Network. I predicted they'd have the worst record in the league last year, but guess what?
And you were right.
And stuff like it's not that I'm being an a-hole. I want them to be good so bad. I want to have that optimism that I do for the White Sox sometimes, even though that has clearly faded. But I think he had 2,200 last year. I'm supposed to believe that he's going to double his total from last year in one offseason because they added DJ Moore and a couple other pretty good weapons, but no Bear has ever thrown for 4,000 yards. I also think he's going to scramble and run a lot more. It'll take away passing opportunities for him. Do I think 4,000 yards of total offense is attainable? Yeah, I do. But I don't think 4,000 passing yards. I'm thinking 28 to 3,200 yards passing, and then 800 to 1,200 yards rushing, depending on what kind of season he has with injuries and success and, talent around him. You brought up the defense. The defense plays into offensive statistics more than people will ever realize unless they really take a deep football dive. Same thing with special teams too. Like if they're getting good field position and stuff, that obviously lowers the amount of yards that you could potentially have on a touchdown drive. But, Justin Fields has 4,000 yards in his career. I can't sit here and act like I'm a lock that he's going to double his career output in yards in one season.
Well, you say that you're a Debbie Downer, but your predictions usually are correct. You predicted the Bears were going to be the worst team in the NFL last season.
I'm good at football. And, I love football. I love it. I sit down on my ass and eat chicken wings and nachos every single Sunday. I'm so fat. It's crazy how much I love football. But baseball and hockey are just a tick above it in terms of, my life work and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I suck at predicting those. I have no damn clue what the hell's going to happen in hockey or baseball. And I won the guillotine league in football. I make these predictions. I win football bets. I'm above 500 in football in my life. I had the Super Bowl matchup right last year from preseason. It's just, if I get right in football way more than any other sport.
How about that?
And I'm not proud of it because it's just always me saying the Bears suck and then they suck and I look right.
Well, on Crosstown Crosstalk, your Thursday afternoon baseball show, you listed the most disappointing teams for 2023, and I'm going to reveal who number one was: the Chicago White Sox.
No shot there. I had the Cardinals at 2, correct?
Yeah, you had the Cardinals at number 2. You had the Mariners at 3. You had the Guardians at 4, and then the Yankees at 5.
Freaking Cub fans had to love that list, right? You got the White Sox, you got the Cardinals. Okay, they're 2 biggest rivals in each league. Yep. The team you beat in the World Series, who you probably have you like seeing them fail now. And then the Yankees, who everyone hates. So the Cubs fans just probably loved that list. Well, you're welcome, Cubs fans. Don't ever say I don't do anything for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, guys, thank you for allowing me to disrupt the show. We're not going to do some of our weekly features here. It's been a thrill talking baseball and Bears and with Mike North with you guys. You guys deliver it every Monday night. This is an important show in the Barroom Network franchise. The only thing that can make the show better is if the White Sox were to win some baseball games. That's it. That's all we need.
There will be a Vinnie explosion on the Barroom Network. I don't know when it is. I just feel like it's all in. I haven't done Put On Your Socks really much this season. I've just been I've tweeted a lot less about them. I've been holding it in. It's coming, though.
Keep holding. That'll be the bigger explosion, right, Zim?
Let it out.
I can't right now. I'm a week removed from being pretty sick, or 2 weeks removed, and I still feel a couple of the residual effects, but it's coming.
So I'll ask both of you guys this. You first, Vinny. How would you feel if next Monday, when Joe is back and you guys are talking the White Sox, and you guys are talking about the White Sox having swept the Chicago Cubs and the Guardians 6 games in a row? How would you feel? Do you feel like, yeah, I'm not falling for that trap again? Or wait a minute, maybe there's some hope here?
Zim, you could go first.
Yeah, as soon as I woke up, I would probably try to figure out what just happened, because there's no way that's happening unless you're in dreamland. Because I wouldn't buy in at all. You can ask these guys on the show. I was getting crapped on the first half of last season for telling everybody the White Sox suck. This is over. We've been led on. We've been deceived. We've been bamboozled. And these guys are like, no. Wait till the All-Star break. Look, they're making a comeback. Steve, you're such a downer. Steve, come on, guys. I'm like, nope. This team's going right down the crapper.
Yeah, if the Sox sweep the...
No, I won't buy in at all.
Yeah, if the Sox sweep the Cubs and the Guardians, I'll turn off my Xbox.
Oh,
that means I was playing the show. That means I was playing MLB The Show, and I swept the Cubs and the Guardians, and it's time to go to bed because video games are unrealistic, and they give you false hope. The A's won 7 in a row. this season. They have a 7-game winning streak back when I think it was early June or mid-June. And the A's don't even have 30 wins yet. They're one of the few teams worse than the White Sox record-wise. So, I would just tell myself, every team does that. They could win if they won 7 in a row, or it would be 6 in a row. The 2 against the Cubs and then the 4 against the Guardians. They would still be a whopping 13 games under 500.
That's just so sad.
So it's not. They're 19 under right now, guys. They're
so
12 and a half games out. I think it's 12 now. I don't look at the standings for the Central every day. I check the NL West standings way more. That division's my favorite division in baseball. But
it's fun. It's a fun division.
So fun. It's so fun. Like the worst team in the division, or the second worst team, is the Padres, and they have the most fun lineup, so they're still fun. Yeah. So, I love that division. It's great.
I'm going to see Diamondbacks Rockies in a few weeks, man. I'm pumped about it. Corbin Carroll, that kid's electric.
Yes, let's go. Awesome. I'm pumped to hear about that. So, no faith in the White Sox. Sell. Try again.
Sell. All right. That's a good comment to leave this episode of South Burbs Hitmen. I want to wish Joe and his wife the very best. Safe travels back home. He will be back here next Monday night with the guys Vinnie and Zim on South Burbs Hitman. You can see me. When's the next time I'm on? Let's see. I think it's Wednesday afternoon with Greg Gabriel. Will be breaking down everything that's going on at Hallis Hall with player interviews and so forth. So we'll have that at 11 a.m. Usually the Dan and Aldo show is Tuesday night, but we're moving it to Thursday night to accommodate our guest. Former Chicago Bears wide receiver Devin Aromashadu is going to join us, and so we'll have some fun with that. You'll see Vinny on Thursday afternoon, Crosstown Crosstalk. And anything else to promote, guys?
Yeah, Wednesday bar down too. Don't forget hockey's still.
Of course,
hockey's slowing down. It's at a dead stop. But Frank and I have a couple fun debates. We have our Mount Rushmores for each other's favorite teams coming on Wednesday. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
That'll be fun.
It will be fun.
Yes,
I can't wait to tell him why Duncan Keith was actually the most important player to the 2010s Hawks.
I don't think anybody would argue with you on that, honestly. There's
a
case to be made.
You got a really good case there, but it'll be an interesting debate. I can't wait to see that one. And yes, that is Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central, Bardon Hockey Talk with Frank Mueller and, of course, Vinnie Parisi. And then not only is the hockey talk good, but when you guys get into pop culture and talk about the movies, Vinnie, did you go see the Barbie movie?
I did go see the Barbie movie.
Did you do the Barbenheimer?
I didn't do Barbenheimer, but my hope is to have seen Oppenheimer by Wednesday, so I could talk about that too, and writing up a little review on each movie for the show. It's funny. The third period is about Barbenheimer. The show's already written, so that'll be good stuff.
Love it. I'll be tuning in. I'm hoping to see it tomorrow night so I can talk to Dan about it on Thursday. Go ahead, Zim.
Do you think I'll understand Oppenheimer if I don't go see Barbie first?
I don't think
that's great.
It's the funniest question I've ever been asked. No, I don't think so. You need to know what happens to Ken at the end of the movie. Otherwise, Robert Downey Jr.'s character will just make no sense whatsoever.
Foster says, come on, Cubs are rolling, but Sox will take 2 out of 3 from the Cubs. Only 2-game series, Foster, so redo that. By the way, I like Foster's predictions here. 2,400 for the wide receivers. That's definitely doable. 900 from the tight ends. That's doable. 700 from the running backs. That's the one that could be tricky.
That's a lot.
Yes, based on what we know of these players. And, like you mentioned, Zim, Khalil Herbert is not a pass-catching running back, and he really needs to improve that part of his game. And when we had Brad Biggs on Gabriel Talks Football recently, he said, keep an eye on Treston Ebner because they drafted him to be a pass-catching running back, and so he didn't get much of a chance last year. He says Treston Ebner is one of the running backs to keep an eye on in training camp. Plus, people are saying, well, how's he going to fit? How is he going to make the team? Brad Biggs is saying there's a chance they might make a trade for one of their running backs because they're stacked with guys. Yeah. Travis Homer, the guy they signed from the Seahawks, he's an excellent pass blocking tight running back. So
a very good special teamer. Very good in like punt coverage, especially.
So he's going to make the team. And so Deontay Foreman does not play special teams. And if Rashawn Johnson is your heir apparent to be the number one running back, do you want him playing special teams? So it's going to be interesting decisions. A lot of fun stuff, and we'll be here at the Barroom Network to debate, discuss, and celebrate, hopefully.
I'll end on this. If Fields ends up getting the 4,000 yards and he's pushing 5,000 yards of total offense, he's right there with Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow for the MVP of the league, and Jalen Hurts. And I mean, there's just no way he's not in that conversation if we're talking those types of numbers. So
I see a fan-sided article. 3 ways Justin Fields can make MVP this season by Vinnie Parisi.
I like that, actually.
Yeah. That'll get Joe a lot of clicks. All right, guys. You guys are the absolute best. This was a lot of fun for me. So any final words? Any shout-outs?
Shout out to you, Aldo. Thank you very much for being the director and producer of today's show. It was very, very fun. Shout out Mike North. It was a very fun time having you on the show. And shout out to my girlfriend, Katie, and my family for always supporting. Love you guys.
Indeed. Zim?
Yeah, thank you, Aldo, for being on with us tonight. We could have done it without you, but it wouldn't have been nearly as good. So we appreciate you coming on, helping us out, filling in admirably for the only Joe Mandel that we have. Looking forward to having him back, though, because the show's just not quite the same without him. So I hope he's having a blast out in New York. He's been sending me pictures of his whole trip. It looks like he's having a blast. He'll have lots of stories to tell us next week, I'm sure.
Can't wait to listen. All right, everybody, for Vinnie, Zim, and for Joe Mandel, I'm Aldo Gandia, and for Mike North, take care, everybody.